Hello everyone and welcome to Scrum Master Primer, a free short course facilitated by IT Masters in partnership for the first time, hopefully of many, with Planet, one of the world's largest software testing consultancies. My name is Guy and I'll be your MC during this course, which is coordinated and presented by Sarah Ireton, who I'll introduce shortly. All webinars for this course will be held at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Time, Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time this week, but Australian Eastern Standard Time 8 p.m. after the clocks are changed next week in the East, and the time difference is much more enjoyable for me and hopefully those of you listening around the world. Before handing over to Sarah, I think an introduction to both IT Masters and Planet is in order, as well as a bit of housekeeping. I'll let Sarah talk about Planet, but I'll talk about IT Masters now. Those new to these courses might be wondering who are IT Masters and why are we running these courses free of charge. IT Masters is a training organisation that exists almost exclusively to create and deliver online courses. We also market these courses on our partners' behalf, and we think the best way to do that is to give some of it away free of charge. If we do a good enough job, we hope that some students will enrol in more in-depth paid courses. That said, this lecture, it's a 3-lecture course, aims to stand alone in its own right. We want you to learn some useful information, have some fun, hopefully make some new connections with your fellow students as well. If you pass the exam at the end, you'll earn a certificate of achievement. We don't require you at all to come and sign up for further study at the end of this course. If you just come away thinking that Planet is a company that is doing some good things and appreciated the course, then for us it's just a win-win. We have James on hand tonight in a technical support role from IT Masters, just in case there are any technical issues in the class tonight. Mia is around too for general support, and she is also responsible for the learn.itmasters.edu.au website, which is where you'll find all the other materials needed for this course, readings, discussion forums, etc., homework. If you have any questions tonight or later on, please feel free to contact us using the details provided on that page. I'll send the link shortly through the chat function there. Just a word on that functionality of GoToWebinar, the platform we're listening to now. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment during the lectures, you can do so using the chat function, and we really strongly encourage you to join in with questions. We think it improves the course quality, and your perspectives and insights can make for a really interactive learning environment, which is something we strive to provide. If the questions are relevant, I'll try to answer as many of the questions as possible just in the chat box. I'll just reply in text either to you personally or to the whole group, or if they're particularly relevant to the question, to the presentation, Sarah will take over and answer the questions, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the lecture. But that's more than enough out of me. Please welcome Sarah Ireton, Senior Trainer at Planet, to discuss. She'll further introduce Planet. She's been a trainer for over 2 decades, specialising in software testing for the last 18. She tells me that she's one of the longest standing, if not the longest standing employee at Planet, so it's exciting to have her here. In addition to the delivery of training, Sarah has undertaken both consulting and test management roles at a number of organisations across diverse industries, and holds a number of testing certifications, and I can confirm that she's just fun to have chatting around. It's really great. So can you please welcome Sarah?
Thank you, Guy, for that wonderful introduction. Hi everybody, welcome to the IT Masters short course Scrum Master Primer. As Guy said, my name's Sarah Ireton. I'm a senior trainer with Planet Testing, and I'm based in our Melbourne office. To give you a little bit of background on Planet, we're the 3rd largest independent software consultancy in the world. Planet is all about ensuring our clients get their applications to market on time with assured quality. And as part of our service offering, we've trained over 30,000 IT professionals and certified more software testers in the Asia Pacific region than any other company. So by attending this short course, you're in good hands. At the end of this short course, you should have a good understanding of Scrum and the Scrum Master role. Obviously, it's just a short course primer, and you'll obviously have the opportunity to continue on if you want to and achieve your full International Scrum Master accredited certification with Planet. So when you take this primer, you're going to get recognition of prior learning. You'll be ahead on some of the knowledge, and we have a discount especially for IT Master students. So for people that are actually interested in going further and getting their full accreditation, Planet will be emailing out information to help you activate your discount, and we'll talk more all about that after next week's session. So Guy sort of introduced me a little bit. But I actually wrote 18 years on the slide, Guy, and then realised I'm just trying to deny how old I am. It's actually more than 18. I've been in training and testing for over 20 years now. I started off as a trainer in the foreign exchange industry, moved into testing, I think, nearly 20 years ago, but 18 years I've been in Melbourne. For those that can't tell, I'm originally English. I'm sure my accent comes across. So basically, I've worked as a test manager and test consultant in many projects. I've worked in banking, insurance, telco, advertising search. I've worked with Department of Defence, military, gaming industries. But for the last 10 years, I've specialised in writing and delivering training courses for Planet, including of course, the ever more popular Agile training courses that we offer, such as Certified Agile Tester, and this one that we're going to be talking about over the next 3 weeks in this short course, which is the Scrum Master accreditation certification. So once again, welcome to the course. I'm looking forward to taking you on this 3-part journey. So I'm hoping there's no questions for me yet by the looks of it, Guy. We're all good. Everyone is all good. We'll make a start, I think.
Good to go.
So just as an introduction, why is it important that we understand the role of Scrum Master, and just a little bit about Agile methodologies in general? Well, as the slide says, Scrum's one of the most common models used. Planet does a yearly report where we gather stats from industries involved in IT and testing. In previous ones, statistics showed that 70% of people that were actually using Agile methods were in fact using in Scrum specifically. So it is probably that's why it is the most common model you'll find. And as you'll see by undertaking this short course over the next 3 weeks, Scrum Master is absolutely vital. It's a vital role to successfully adopting Scrum within an organisation. So interest in Agile, look, ever increasing. It's more and more. I do training regularly in Melbourne and other states around Australia, and whether I'm teaching an Agile course or not, more and more people are telling me their companies are moving to Agile, they're looking at Agile, and this is pretty much because we've got ever increasing delivery deadlines in IT, speed to market. Agile, we did our latest Planet Index 2016 figures showed that 55% of all Agiles are now using 55% of all projects are now using Agile models. So it's definitely the way the industry is going, and as IT professionals, it's vitally important that we stay current with the industry's best practice and have the knowledge and expertise to deliver and meet organisations' business outcomes. And the other thing I'll say to people is, of course, it also keeps you at the top of the hiring list because you know the new stuff that they're looking for. So knowing about Scrum, getting your Scrum Master certification, if you are in the job market, it's definitely going to be an advantage these days. So just to take a moment, we'll look at what is Agile. There are different definitions. Here's a couple that we've put up for you. But if you look at any of them, you'll see that they all talk about very similar things. They talk about iterations, increments, minimal planning, small pieces of work, a big thing about collaboration. And at the end of the day, every Agile model that is out there has common characteristics. I actually should throw in there now, Agile itself is not a model. It's like a banner header for a number of different methodologies, and that's something that people don't always know. But all these agile models, of which Scrum is one, have common characteristics. They're iterative and incremental. They're all based on short time box sprints that deliver increments of work in software. They're all very cooperative. So it's all about, that's all done, all this work is done in a very communicative and collaborative manner. The other key common characteristic is that they're adaptive. As they adapt and change, as more information comes to light, they will change and adapt as they need to. And it's all about those three things coming together and combining to form working software. I like the quote by Scott Ambler, the bottom one. I think that's probably one of the most succinct ones that you'll find. But I think I'd also like to note that lots of people say they're using Agile, but they are not. Just because they call it Agile doesn't make it Agile. So I actually can see a question, Guy. I'm just going to jump in. You know, they don't always run Agile, or people say they are and they're not. You do need to be aware of that, many people say they're doing Agile, but they're actually not. So the history of Agile, I mean, again, these incremental and iterative approaches have actually been around since the 1950s. They're nothing new. And I think initially the increase in popularity of Agile was initially driven by a perception, and there's lots of myths out there, guys. Please be aware of that. But this perception or myth that Agile has minimal or no documentation and they follow significantly less formalized processes, and that is absolutely far from the truth. Agile methods are all about valuing communication over documentation, but at no point do any of them ever say no doco. The original term that was used was light methodologies, and that was replaced with the word Agile. And in February 2001, there was various creators and supporters of these light methodologies that all came together to determine if there were any common attributes. And so they had this big meeting, and the end result of that meeting was they came up with what's known as the Agile Manifesto. So this is the actual Agile Manifesto if you've never seen it before, and there is an emphasis in Agile methodologies to focus on what's on the left-hand side. The more value, these are things that we value more, but it doesn't mean that we exclude what's on the right hand. We just see that what's on the left hand is more important. So the manifesto pretty much captured the IT's industry interest. It, very much focused on continuously delivering working software while allowing for and supporting change requirements. So as a Scrum Master, there's a number of ways that you can guide and mentor a team towards Agile work practices as per the manifesto. So for example, they talk about individuals and interactions over processes and tools. This is about encouraging conversation. As a Scrum Master, you'd encourage conversation between your team members, for example. In a traditional IT project, if as a tester we found a defect in the code, what we would normally do is we would log this into a defect tracking tool, and there would be this whole process that goes through. In an Agile Scrum team, we're more likely to walk over, because we're part of the same team, as you'll hear more about if you don't know. I'm more likely to be able to walk over to the developer as a tester and have a conversation with them about it, rather than using a tracking tool. The second one's working software over comprehensive documentation. Again, we need some documentation, but this is all about having software that works. So if we spend huge amounts of time writing down everything that we want the document to do, we're wasting a lot of time and we're not building anything. So one of the things that you would do as a Scrum Master, for example, would be to get the team to think about what documentation do they really need. It's about being lightweight. It's quality, not quantity, yeah? Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Again, the Scrum Master, it's very much about encouraging the team to ensure that they are interacting and talking with whoever their customer is frequently. It's about working together with your customer to give them what they need when they need it, not give them what they need, give them what they thought they wanted 6 months ago. Yeah, because that's how traditional projects often work. And it's also about responding to change over following a plan. That's not to say that we don't have a plan. We will talk about plans, Scrum planning in week 3 in more detail, but basically we have what's known as a roadmap. As a Scrum Master, it's about making sure you're mentoring the team and they understand that we have a release plan, but it's a roadmap. It's not a concrete plan. If you've worked in IT projects before, you know, we have this project plan and you know, if we printed out the Gantt chart, it might wallpaper an entire house. This is one of the things where, you know, we accept adaptive planning, and again we're going to talk more about that in week 3. So let's talk a little bit more about what Scrum actually is. So Scrum is technically a lightweight agile project management framework. It's mainly used for software development and it is iterative and incremental. So Scrum was originally developed in 1993 by Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber. I hope I'm saying his surname right. Since that time it's been used at many software companies, which has resulted in the method being extended and enhanced. But before I move on, I would like to clear up some confusion on the actual meaning of incremental and iterative, because they're often used interchangeably. To put it very, very simply, incrementing means you start with having a fully formed idea, but you build a little bit at a time. And iterating is where we start with a rough idea and we build up by repeating our process to achieve quality. And so Scrum has elements of both in it. Yeah. So the term Scrum actually refers to rugby. I joke that when I train Scrum in Melbourne, I have trouble with people not knowing what a rugby Scrum is because they're all obsessed with AFL. But it is actually based on the analogy of a rugby Scrum, and it's being used as an analogy to describe a better approach to product development. So it's all about the team that tries to go the distance as a unit, passing the ball back and forth. And so everyone within the team would typically have their specialist skills, but they all work together to achieve the goal. So key characteristics of Scrum is that it's iterative and incremental. It utilises what's known as cross-functional teams, so people with all the skills that we need to produce an incremental release, and that's known as a sprint. Those teams are self-directed and empowered, and that work is facilitated by the role of the Scrum Master, which is why it's such an important role. And the work that they do is organised by something known as a product backlog, which is reprioritised for every sprint. And again, we're going to talk more about the product backlogs in week 3. Have we got any questions that we need answered, Guy? Just jumping in if anyone.
Yeah, I've got a few in red there, if you can see the red flags.
I can't see any red flags.
Okay, Jim, could you possibly order it in terms of flags? But I'll ask a couple of questions. One from Mohammed. I'm not from a software development background. Can I use this as well? Is this relevant to me?
Sorry, what was that one?
I'm not from a software development background. Can I transfer? Are there any transferable skills from Scrum?
Well, it's a project management thing. I mean, you could project manage building a house using agile methodologies like Scrum.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a way of managing projects. It's traditionally associated with software, but other agile methodologies like Lean actually comes from Toyota, and they build cars.
Great, and there's another question.
There's a question
linked to that. What are the advantages of Scrum over Kanban or Lean?
Yeah. Hang on. Can I filter? 1 second. Just a technical thing so I can see the question, Guy. 1 second.
Yep. Just for you folks asking the questions, we've got a lot coming in, and thanks very much for them. We'll prioritise them as best we can and get to as many as we can throughout the lecture or at the end. But I just I prioritise the questions for the lecturer to get to. So we're just getting that sorted now.
Let me get back to the question. We were, someone's asked about Lean and Kanban. So hang on. So someone's asking about not from software development. Look, I will talk about it, and it's later in this one, but there are skills that you do need to be a good Scrum Master. And if it's going to be used for IT and software development, then the reality is you do need to know about development know-how. You need to know about IT, software, testing, coding, these sorts of skills would be a really good idea. It's very hard to support a team that are doing that if you don't have an understanding. I'm not saying you have to be able to write program code, for example, but you've got to have an understanding of it. There's so many questions coming in.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.
I'm losing the questions in red again. So I've lost where I am.
All right, maybe if you can prioritise them to the top, the red ones stay at the top.
Okay. Okay. So who usually takes on the role of Scrum Master, Project Manager? They can do it as a project management role, but I will talk about that because the Scrum Master is almost replacing the Project Manager.
Yeah, and a point we can take from that is sometimes if we don't actually answer your questions, it's because they're likely going to be answered later on in the course. So if your question isn't answered, please don't take offence. Please don't think we're not listening. We're just going to get to it.
Now we'll actually jump to the next one is who will monitor the Scrum Master. Why do we need to monitor them? I'm not sure. How do we measure his role? I mean, if the team is delivering, then they're doing a good job, and if the team's not delivering, then the Scrum Master's maybe not doing that. I don't know. I mean, I can see, you know, it looks like people are talking about KPIs and stuff. I think maybe that's what this question is about. But, you know, how do we monitor any resource in their role? I think it's individual, but from my personal perspective, if I had a Scrum Master and a team that was doing what they're supposed to do and delivering my stuff on time, then it's an indication to me that they're doing a good job, and the Scrum Master is a very important part of that. The other one, because I'm not going to talk about them, I will answer, is the Scrum over Kanban or Lean. I think the slide I've put up now, it's the most popular. But, you know, Kanban is another one. It just simply limits work in progress and helps you identify bottlenecks in your process. Lean is not particularly associated with software. Lean, as I've said, is actually from Toyota, and they build cars. So Lean might be one that's more appropriate in manufacturing. But I'll be honest, I'm an expert on Scrum. I'm not an expert on Lean. You know, I think probably one of the biggest advantages is that it is popular, you will, you know, I think it's popular because it's simple, it's prescriptive, it's structured, it tells you how to do things, and we like structure, people like structure. If we've got too many options to choose from, then it means we can get caught up taking too much time making a decision rather than just making one and getting on with what we need to do. So Scrum is all about helping manage teams, and so the big answer, one of the other answers here in why is it so popular is that it helps with motivation. So the Scrum Master actually plays a really key role in motivating the individuals within the team, and the framework itself actually breaks down work into very small periods of time. It's all about maintaining, I suppose, an acceptable level of pressure on the team. They've got these small constant little deadlines, and if you combine those motivating events within Scrum, they all drive the team forward. So with all team members accountable to the others, there's this sense of ownership and responsibility. And the ownership factor is a very motivating force in itself, in that, you know, people want to do well because they don't want to let down the team. So this is going to answer one of the other questions about what you can use it on. Look, Scrum can be used on all kinds of software development, for developing complete software packages, for developing only some parts of a bigger system, or for customer or internal projects. I will say that Scrum in its simplest form is best used for a smaller one-team project, but it is also usable in bigger multi-teams and or distributed team projects. And it's not something we're going to, you know, but you would cover it as part of the Scrum Master, the full Scrum Master course, which is where it can be scaled for big, large enterprise projects. So the Scrum Master also is all about implementing those cornerstones that we've talked about that were defined in the Agile Manifesto. And as it says, it's structured. It tells us what to do, but it doesn't, it's not, you know, it's not set in stone. There's only a few general guidelines. There's a few roles. There's a few artifacts. There's a few events, or ceremonies is the other word that's called. But nevertheless, each of these is really important. You couldn't ignore any of them, because the minute you ignore or don't follow these guidelines and rules and things, then the framework will break down in some way. So the main components of the actual Scrum framework are three roles. So we've got the Scrum Master, what's known as the Scrum Product Owner, and the Scrum team. And they would then have what's known as a prioritized backlog of, now I've put user stories. This is the common format the Agile teams use. User stories is actually from XP, which is Extreme Programming, another Agile model, but it tends to have been adopted by most Agile teams. So if you join an Agile project out there now, they're probably most commonly following Scrum, and they use user stories as the format for their requirements, but it could be use cases, etc. There are different ways of doing it, but ultimately the backlog is the user requirements, what we need to build for the customer. They then have the concept of a sprint. So a sprint is time box development. It's where the team works for a set period of time developing the software, and it's fixed in duration. It's always the same length, and that length though can differ. So this is one saying it's not set in stone. We've got flexibility. The sprints are a minimum of 5 days to maximum of 30. And then the other one is the major events. There's a number of major events and meetings that we have throughout. So we have what's known as a sprint planning meeting. That's commonly referred to as the what, how meeting. We have the daily Scrum meeting. You might have heard that referred to as daily stand-up, because you actually stand up for that one. We have what's known as a sprint review meeting. So again, this is where we're reviewing the work where the team presents the finished software. and then we have a retrospective at the end, which is where the team reflects on how things have gone. I will point out that we're going into a lot more detail about all the Scrum events in week 2, and I'm just looking at a question, Guy. Environmental influences are required to adopt Agile. That's a really interesting question. Agile in general, Scrum, any of them, is very different to how IT projects have traditionally run, and you have to have a cultural mind shift a little bit inside an organisation about how it's different. I think as I go through the rest of today and the next 2 weeks, I think you'll realise how things are different, and I think probably the biggest hindrance is people actually understanding that it is quite different in many ways. You know, we might not have the metrics that we're used to having from a traditional IT project, that we don't necessarily have this level of reporting that we traditionally have, and that can be, so I think if that's, I think that's what the environmental influences is referring to. An organisation needs to be in the right frame of mind, and you know, it's not necessarily the right fit for every organisation. You know, it depends on the organisation. So here's a slide that's got a visual representation of the Scrum process altogether. So we've talked about our roles. We've got the product owner, we've got the Scrum Master, we've got the team, and the whole point of the Scrum framework is it allows for optimising resource usage, i.e. time and budget, and minimising waste. So what we've got is these very specified roles. We've got various elements within each sprint. So for argument's sake, what I'm showing you on the slide, that could be a 2-week sprint, you know, 10 working days. And within those 2 weeks, there is a planning component. So that's where we do the sprint planning and we work out what we're going to be building. And then we've got the work component. So that's the circle in the middle that you can see, where we design, build, test, design, develop the code, test the code, and that is obviously in a circle because that's our very iterative process. We've got our every 24 hours we're doing our daily Scrum. We're potentially monitoring progress on a burn down chart. That's something again we'll talk more about next week. As we've discussed, there's also a review component at the end, and all this is time boxed within that sprint, and it's all about helping establish a rhythm to the way the team works to help drive them forward to achieve the sprint goal. So they have a goal of what they have to deliver in that sprint. So one of the central aspects within the Scrum framework is continuous improvement. They talk about adapt and excuse me, inspect and adapt. So the Scrum teams are expected to frequently inspect and assess what they've created, the artifacts they've created, and the processes they've used in order to adapt and optimize them. In the midterm, this will optimize the results, it increases predictability, and therefore minimizes overall product risk. And the whole thing about the Scrum framework is that it tries to deal with the fact that the requirements are likely to change quickly or not completely known at the start of a project. So the low-level requirements that we would actually work off are only defined at a time when they are going to be implemented within that sprint that we're working in. So in Scrum, changes and the optimization of the product, the requirements and processes are a big integral part of the whole cycle. And the other big cornerstone of the Scrum framework is, of course, communication. The Scrum product owner works really closely with the Scrum team to make sure they've identified and prioritised the functionality that the customer needs. The product owner is representing them. And that's what we're storing in the product backlog. And that backlog consists of the easy way to explain it, we're going to talk about it more, as I've said, in subsequent weeks, is that it's everything that needs to be done to deliver what the customer wants working software, the system itself, yeah? So I saw someone say about who plays the role of Scrum Master. Well, I did mention there are some skills that I'll talk about later, but the big important thing in Scrum is that Scrum projects are self-organising and the communication within the team. And there normally is not a project manager in the classical sense. We could say that really in the Scrum Framework, the Scrum Master and the Scrum Product Owner, I would say, share the responsibilities that are normally associated with a project manager. However, and this is a big however, in the end the team decides what and how much they can do in a given project sprint, because that's what we're talking about. They're empowered, they're self-directing. So the Scrum Framework changes the classical triangle of project management. You know, normally we're talking about time, budget and quality. So you have this triangle and those are the three sides, and if you reduce the time, then you'll affect the budget and you'll affect the quality and so on and so forth. But that is not what we have in Scrum. Our triangle is now a triangle of budget, time and functionality. So the thing that's, I suppose, flexible from the customer's point of view is what functionality they'll actually have in that time. It might be different to what they originally asked for because they've changed their minds. And quality, the reason that quality is not in our classic project management triangle anymore is because quality is no longer an option when you're using Scrum. There are a number of factors that define when a feature is complete in terms of quality. They use what's known as definition of done. And so there's no, there's no question. It's got to be quality. We won't let it, it won't make it out of the sprint unless it's a quality piece of work. So we're of course talking about the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is is responsible for ensuring Scrum is understood, enacted by the team in the organisation, and it's done by ensuring that the Scrum team adheres to Scrum theory and the practices and the rules. So the Scrum Master is actually referred to as servant leader to the team. Their role is to ensure the effective running of that Scrum framework. Removing impediments, guiding and mentoring the team in Scrum's best practice. I will just jump in here. Someone's asking about how do you control scope if the customer's requirements evolve. I'm actually going to answer that in week 3 because we do what's known as adaptive planning. So it is about the customer understanding their scope can change, but they might not get, if they increase the scope, they won't get it on the same date they expected it before. When you add stuff, it takes longer. That's the short answer to that one. Scrum, servant leader, the term servant leadership and the concept behind it has actually existed in project management for a while. In Scrum, the role of the Scrum Master, the Scrum Master serves the product owner, they serve the team, they serve the organisation in a number of ways. So for example, finding techniques for effective backlog management is something I will do to serve the product owner if I'm a Scrum Master. It's about understanding product planning and with the product owner again, understanding and practicing the concept of agility and coaching the team. That's why we're talking about rugby. The Scrum Master is a coach. Fundamentally, they're not the manager. There is no manager. So they're coaching the team to ensure the team are self-organised. One thing the Scrum Master does is they facilitate various Scrum events, and they're very much should be causing change to increase the productivity of the Scrum team. So one of the things about being a Scrum Master is you need to use your judgment when you're making decisions. There are many different styles of management or leadership, and depending on the situation that you are presented with, then the Scrum Master needs to be able to change leadership styles. They can only achieve their responsibilities that they are given in this framework by adapting their different leadership styles for the circumstances they find themselves in. Guy, I'm just going to jump in and answer this question about quality.
Sure.
So David's asked a question, which I will read out. Quality is very subjective. I agree with you. In Agile and specifically in Scrum, it's all about working software. So if the software is working and my product owner is happy with it, then we're done. And we use things, as I said, definition of done is like a checklist of activities that is done by the teams, David, to ensure that what they produce is truly done in terms of quality. I hope that answers that question. One of the things that came up before as well was about skills. You know, we've got several important responsibilities as a Scrum Master, and if you were going to be a Scrum Master, to be effective, there are a number of skills that are very helpful. Number one is development know-how. For example, you know, having an understanding of software design and functionality, IT in general, to help encourage the team to keep things simple in terms of design, and maybe be able to support and help them with discussions if they've got possible different alternate ways that they could take. Another big skill is moderation skills. So, you know, moderation is the process of teachers, or in our case, Scrum Master is known as a coach, sharing their expectations and understandings with others in order to improve the consistency of their decisions. So the Scrum Master is typically facilitating all the meetings and other group stuff, and they should all be formats that can and should be valuable tools for effective sharing of information, learning, and for decision making. So the big thing is the coaching skills. You know, we've got development know-how, we've got moderation, but we've also got coaching skills. You know, a Scrum Master is about supporting and challenging and empowering others to develop their capabilities. So coaching itself is about a force for change and improvement, and that's ultimately, you know, the Scrum Master needs to refrain from providing a solution. It's not about me telling the team what they should do. It's, you know, it's about help them identify there is a problem and help them to work out their solution to it. And coaching pushes the team to accept responsibility for their decisions and be accountable. And this is all core to how the Scrum Framework and most of the Agile, you know, pretty much all the Agile methodologies go. I've got another question that I'll jump in and answer. You don't need a project manager on a Scrum project, which is, we've been asked does the Scrum Master role make the traditional PM role redundant? It depends. So I should mention that it's a bit of a running joke when you teach Agile courses, because the trainer will often say to you, when you ask a question, well, it depends. On a single project, small one-team project, then there is no project manager. But if you were scaling Scrum for a large project, some organisations might have the concept of a project manager, but Scrum itself has the concept of a Scrum of Scrums and a Chief Scrum Master. So it really does replace the PM role, so to speak. So ultimately, the Scrum Master is the central source that keeps the team motivated and momentum flowing to get all the sprints completed on time and deliver what they've promised, committed to delivering. And, you know, I'm not going to read out what's the slide. You can read what's on the slide. There's key responsibilities that are associated with the Scrum Master. And one of the big ones is guarding the team. This is about so the team can keep that momentum going. So if someone from outside your project comes in and wants to ask someone in the team a question, then it's almost like I'm the guard dog as the Scrum Master. I'm like, hey, no, talk to me and I'll deal with it, you know. We've already talked about change and coaching. The other big one is removing impediments. So if there's something that's stopping the team move, if they need something resolved, then I'm the person that's going to go off as Scrum Master and fight that fire, and so on. So, you know, given these responsibilities, there's numerous ways that as a Scrum Master we can achieve them. You know, we help remove distractions by ensuring ownership of the roadblocks, ensuring that people don't interrupt the team. We guide the group to maximise their productivity. Step in, for example, step in when someone in the team isn't completing their work and the team hasn't taken responsibility to resolve the issue itself. So it is very much about letting them deal with it, but stepping in if they're not, and getting them to focus on resolving it. You know, it is all about encouraging them to take their own direction. It's not telling them what needs to be done. Often your product owner is a business person, and a lot of what you might do is also mentor them, so they understand their responsibilities in the product owner role in the Scrum framework. You know, question. You should question the processes, the practices, documentation if they are not adding value. You know, we're not producing stuff just for the sake of it. This is all about being an agent for change. Obviously, making sure all team team members are involved in estimation and planning. It's a team effort. Encourage open and honest feedback during retrospectives. Encourage the team to come up with the improvements and take ownership of implementing them for the next sprint. Excuse me. That's actually all I'm going to talk about today. We've got some questions at the end, so hang in for that. But that's all. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to hearing more next week. We have got some homework for you, which is to answer some or all of the questions presented, and that's where you can post on the forum or constructively respond to others. So just to recap, we've got some questions here. You know, what do you think are some of the reasons why interest in Agile software development is actually increasing significantly? And, you know, why do you think the traditional development models for software development often fail? If you've worked in IT, I'm sure you've been on one where you've had that experience. And the other side of that is, but if we do move to Agile, how does that address those issues that those traditional development models suffer from? And I actually have a homework question here, which I've pretty much answered a little bit, which is, why do you think there's no longer a project manager? Why do we not need that project manager in a Scrum? Yeah? So in closing, I'm looking forward to speaking to you next week, and next week we're going to be going into much more detail. We're going to talk about Scrum values, and we're going to talk about Scrum core practices and artifacts, and we're also going to talk about Scrum ceremonies. Those are the meetings and things. So things that we've mentioned this week, we're going to talk a little bit more about next week. That's me done, Guy. If you want to
Jump in.
I hope
Yes,
that went okay.
it was wonderful. Thank you. From the sheer volume of questions, people's interest is certainly piqued. Initial question, how long would you like the answers to be? for the homework questions. And we also have literally hundreds of other questions, folks, so you've been very busy.
No, I can see some that I definitely will answer about BA, analyst role, and so on. Look, I don't know how long the answers are. I think you can have an opinion. I mean, you know,
quality
not
is
a one-liner.
Hang
on, let's be agile.
Subjective.
Well, no, let's be agile. Well, let's be lightweight, quality over quantity. Someone can write a whole page of answer for one of the homework questions, but we don't do that in agile. So let's focus on lightweight, agile approach to documentation, right enough to answer the question. There you go.
Yeah, and I think
sounds like a plan.
That's a really, you know, illustrative answer actually. Like a lot of these questions are coming, it seems to me, from the old perspective. You know, like very much grounded in the processes that people have already adopted and have been working in for you know 1, 2, 10, 20 years, whatever. So this is basically, from the sound of it, a complete change in perspective. Is that right? So would it be fair to say that?
Yeah. Now I'm just looking at these questions. One of them is, should the Scrum Master influence and enforce decisions if team is not able to make a consensus? No, is the short. We're not actually talking about too much on this short course. We're not talking about teams too much, but we will talk about it a little bit next week. But teams should not be greater than about 9 in Scrum. I think I mentioned it next week. And it's because it's human basic psychology. If you get more than 9 people in the room, you won't get consensus. Now, what I will say is, every situation is different, and the team themselves might decide. So if they do an estimation and they can't create consensus, then teams will decide whether they might go with majority rules. So if we have 5 people in the team and 3 people agree and 2 don't, then at some point but it's their decision. So yes, as I've said, the Scrum Master, that's the thing about the name, you know, Scrum Master sometimes conjures up the concept that is the manager, but they're not, and that's what I've been hopefully got across. I'm the coach, I'm the servant leader. I don't tell them what to do. I tell them, you need to do this, so how are you going to do it, I suppose, yeah? There's another question there about how is the initial backlog divided into sprints. That's all to do with release planning. I'm covering that in week 3. BA, business analysts. The members on the team, often someone that is traditionally been a business analyst is now a member of the team. When we're talking about building software, we need certain skills in that. We need people that can write code. We need people that can elicit requirements. We need people that can design software. We need people that can test software. So very often, someone that was a business analyst is actually now a member of the team. What I will tell you, though, is you're no longer just a business analyst, and that's what we mean by cross-functional. So we need everyone in the team to have more than one skill. We talk about skills in Agile and Scrum teams being generalists. How do we manage risk in this environment? We still do risk-based testing. I come from a testing background. We still do risk management, and actually risk, it's no different to any IT project. I would, in terms of how we manage risk, we do the high risk stuff first. We focus on that, the important things first. That's the whole concept of the backlog. Again, that I think will become clearer when we talk about it in the 3rd week. Are we required to use tools? Do you mean, I'm not sure, maybe we could get some clarification. I don't know if we can, Guy. I'm not sure what they mean about tools. Do they mean like test management tools or automation tools? Do you know what they mean?
Shohin, that was your question. Is the Scrum Master responsible to teach how to use required tools? I think that's just about training within the Scrum framework or perspective.
Oh, because the word tool threw me, because when someone says required tools in IT, I think like test management tool or a physical tool that you use to do automation of testing or something like that,
Yeah, and it
or
could well
configuration
be.
of code. Yeah.
But just in general,
And
how about training
well, that
within
is my
that?
job.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the trainer. I'm the coach to make sure they follow the rules. That's what we
Mm.
said. So bear in mind, we talked about the Agile Manifesto. We value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. That's not to say that we don't use tools, but it's not something that the Scrum Master is responsible for, to teach someone how to use Excel, for example. No. That's not what your role is. What else have we got? If there is no project manager, does the Scrum Master? Not traditionally. So this is where I think I mentioned that what's traditionally managed by a project manager is sort of shared between the Scrum Master and the product owner. And the product owner is the representative from the business. So we have a question here that talks about financial and progress reporting. Progress reporting is definitely coming from the team each sprint. And we're going to talk about burn down charts next week. That's one way they demonstrate progress. The other is obviously they're delivering everything they said they would in a sprint. From a financial point of view, it's not really something the Scrum Master would typically do because they're busy keeping the team going. As I've said, there can be project managers outside of the actual Scrum team in an organisation. It depends how the Scrum framework's been implemented, and typically if you've got a number of teams that are all working on different parts of a system, then outside of that you still need someone coordinating all of them, and that can often be the traditional PM role. Is there anything else that I can't see yet?
I just want to give Sudhir a shout out. He's been peppering questions in. I'm
looking if there's any.
So I'll give you one of his. How is backlog generated? Is it done from SRS documents?
No, it's the responsibility of the product owner to create the product backlogs. They're responsible. Basically, the backlog is everything that needs to be done. The way to think about it is the customer requirements, and the product owner is the conduit between the customer or customers and the team. So they obviously we're talking about Scrum Master specifically, but there are other roles, which is the team, and there are other roles, which is the product owner, and they are all important, which is what we said today, earlier this evening. So the product owner has their own set of responsibility and roles, but I haven't focused on that on this because we're focusing on the Scrum Master. So the short answer is the product owner is responsible for creating and managing the backlog and making sure it's in the correct priority for the risk profile, which was the other question we had.
Thank you. If you're happy to stick around, Sarah, for another few minutes, there's still a lot of questions to get to.
Yeah, they're going so fast on my screen.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the ones that you flagged. I'm pretty sure, is a Scrum documented? I'm not quite sure what the question is asking. Can we get clarification? We do write some documentation. Yes, we do produce artifacts. We are going to talk next week about the concept of just enough, which is, there's this myth. I think that's what she's asking. Do we write anything down? Yes, we do, if that's the question. We do write stuff down. We just don't waste time writing stuff down that we don't need to. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about next week when we go through in more detail about the framework and ceremonies is the concept of everything is approached as just enough.
And if you apply that to lots of other questions, it should answer them. I think.
Well, I think I've already answered that the Scrum Master doesn't own the budget and the timelines. I think I've already answered that one. But I will, there's one saying, should the Scrum Master be a dedicated role and not have multiple roles, i.e. developer and tester as well? David, it depends. There's my running joke answer on an Agile course. It's normally a good idea to have a dedicated Scrum Master, but it doesn't have to be that way. Bear in mind though, for example, if I am playing the role of Scrum Master and I am also expected to do some of the testing work or some of the development work, then the amount of actual work I can create as a tester or as a developer is going to be limited by what I have to do as a Scrum Master. And one of my big roles as Scrum Master is fight fires. So when the team's got a problem, I'm the person that's going to be running off and going to the other side of the building and talking to whoever I need to resolve that issue so the team can be working. So personally, it can be done, but I would say it's a good idea to have a dedicated role. And I think if your company's new to implementing Scrum, you know, definitely I think having a dedicated Scrum Master initially, and then as maybe the team gets more comfortable and it's easier for them to predict what amount of percentage of that Scrum Master's time would be available to do the work, then because otherwise there's a real issue that could happen, which is that they don't do what they're supposed to do in the sprint. The work doesn't get done because we thought the Scrum Master would be around to do the testing or the dev work, and they're not. There you go. What's this last one? Is this... Sorry, Guy, what's the last one?
The last flagged one?
Yeah.
This... I want to be getting help. So.
No, this course, this is just a primer. The IT Masters are we're gonna have a quiz on the 4th week, but it's not the certification. That's what we were saying. This is just to get an understanding of this, and IT Masters do a little quiz about what we do over the 3 weeks, an exam, so to speak, that, you know, is proof that you've attended and you can answer the questions. But if you want the full certification, then that's what we're saying, where we're going to offer you the Planet course with a discount.
That was Patrick's question.
I think that's what he's asking.
Yeah, there's been quite a few questions throughout this course about how this course relates to other courses. So it's a primer. Suggesting.
Yeah, basically this is not, you can't do these 3 weeks with me for an hour and know everything there is to know about Scrum and being a Scrum Master. That's what Guy's introduction was all about, guys. It's about the fact that we're saying, you know, these are some key things. If you come on the full course, then you're going to be ahead of the game because you're going to know some of it. But yeah, you still need to do the full course. There's a lot more that I will not talk about at all because it's 3 weeks and I haven't got time.
Yeah, and there's going to be a presentation next week, I think, at the end of the lecture. Is that right?
Yes. So yeah.
Going more in depth into what Planet actually does, what the courses are available, and where this will actually lead to. So
yeah, So that's after next week's session. Yeah. Are we done? I think that's all the questions we've.
Oh, we could go all day, but
all night for me.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know where I did actually see someone was in Dubai.
Yes, yeah,
earlier.
All over. Yep.
So, oh my God, I'm being heard around the world.
You're famous, folks. There have been an enormous number of questions. I'm sorry if some of you have become upset because we haven't been able to get to your questions.
Bear in mind though, hang on, I will say, can I jump in, Guy? I will say, guys, some of the questions that you've got up there, you know, Guy and I know we're going to talk about next week or the week after and stuff like that. And there's only so much time to answer so many things.
And with that in mind, that's where we get to saying a lot of these would be really useful questions to ask in the forums. We've got the forums on the learn.itmasters.edu.au
Yeah.
website. So I really strongly encourage you to ask your questions there. We can really, students can answer other students' questions. People can get background information if they need it. People can help other students. So if you have any questions, feel free to post a forum thread, and you'd be amazed some of the threads that come through. We were reading one earlier that says there's a family taking part in this course. So the forums are for you. You can make of it what you will, and you can make it fantastic if you want to.
There are some other questions there, but I do know we're going to talk about it. But one of them talks about estimation, and the team do the estimation. You might have heard about story points and velocity. Again, we're going to talk about that. Excuse me. Later in the other weeks as well. So, but poker planning, you can have fun with it. They have fun with it. They do something called poker planning, many teams. And again, it's about that group consensus that we talked about before. So they talk, just the short answer for the how do we estimate is the team sits around and talks about the user story or what they're being asked to do, and they all estimate. And show their cards at the same time. They often use Fibonacci numbers. Yeah, story points. It's a bit more fun than normal estimation in my opinion, but that's just me.
And just another reminder, folks, that page where you can get all of the course information, you'll be able to get a recording of this lecture in 24 hours. You can get the lecture slides to download.
I forgot to do that.
.edu.au.
I forgot to do that. We've been doing the questions and I didn't have the slide up, Guy.
Alrighty. So I might just cut it off there, say thanks very much for everyone listening and attending and sending in your questions. It's been intense and great. It's clear that, there's a lot of information. There is a lot to sort of take in with this. It seems like it's a really new approach, or not a new approach, but a really different approach. So feel free to keep the chat going. We'll all catch up with you next week. I want to thank Sarah, James, Mia for coming in today or tonight, and we'll see everyone next week. If you've got anything else to add, Sarah, before we go.
I'd just like to say thanks for listening, and I hope it was enjoyable, and I'll look forward to talking to you more next week. Thanks, Guy.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, everyone.